No surprise, the Carolina Panthers take Bryce Young with the first overall pick in the NFL draft, and we're here to break it down for fantasy football today. So, Heath, I think this is something we expected for, I think, several weeks, but not until the pick was actually official did it feel like, okay, here it is. Bryce Young is the number one overall pick. So let's start with him as a fantasy asset. What do we think? Is he going to come in and be somebody that could be a reliable fantasy option at some point during the season? Is he going to be somebody that you're looking to draft?
That's going to depend a lot on what they do in the rest of this draft because as it's currently constructed, I think he's probably more of a low end QB2. I'm not sure unless they add a wide receiver in round 2 that I'm going to like him more than that. He's much more exciting in Dynasty. I do think that he has more rushing ability than he showed in college. He can make people miss. Obviously, the one concern we have is the size and how that plays in the NFL. We often see that rookies as passers, if they're going to be successful in fantasy, they've got to run a lot because generally as passers, they're not very good. I don't think he'll run enough to be a fantasy starter.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think it's gonna, be hard to trust somebody when you're looking at the receiving core as it's currently constructed with Adam Thielen as most likely the number one wide receiver as of now. We hope to see them add some other weapons, and who knows what happens with some cuts along the way, maybe a trade or two. They could still be in the market to add some certain wide receiver help, but it doesn't look like there's a lot to help Bryce Young right now. You mentioned his dynasty value, so let's start with a one quarterback league and then talk super flex and two quarterback leagues, mostly super flex for dynasty purposes. So one quarterback rookie only draft, is Bryce Young a first round pick?
I think he'll be right around 12. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these guys, when you get past the top 2 or 3 running backs and past the top 3 or 4 wide receivers, are going to be so dependent on draft capital and landing spot, and whether they sneak into the end of round 2 or they're in round 3 or even worse, day 3 picks. But I would expect that both Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud going to be right around that 10th pick to 14th pick when it comes to rookie only drafts. Now, when you're talking about Superflex, he's in the consideration for number 2. There's not anybody at this point I'm going to take over Bijan Robinson, regardless of what the format is. But for me, he would right now be the number 2 pick.
And he's still your number one quarterback. We know that C.J. Stroud, as we're recording this, goes to the Texans. We don't know about Will Levis. We don't know about Anthony Richardson. If they end up in spots that maybe they could be starters right away, you'd still take Bryce Young as the first quarterback.
I will take Bryce Young as the first quarterback unless Anthony Richardson is picked in the next 2 picks, probably. I think if he goes in those top 4 because there's a chance that somebody just trades up and goes and get him, then you have to assume that he's got a longer leash. If he falls into the 10 or teens range, then Anthony Richardson's floor is just too low for me to rank him as the QB1.
It's going to be so interesting to see where those other 2 guys end up. But yes, I would take, as you said, same Bryce Young over C.J. Stroud. Again, Stroud going to the Texans. All right, let's talk about the weapons in Carolina and what we're looking at. Again, not exactly the sexiest group when you're looking at Adam Thielen and DJ Chark and Terrace Marshall. We know about the running backs there. It's mostly Miles Sanders going to be the lead option. We'll see if they add to their backfield as well to compete with Chuba Hubbard as well as number 2 guy there. But in terms of the receivers, now that they have their quarterback in place, presumably going to start. I don't know if Andy Dalton will get the first start, but we'll see. Hopefully it is Bryce Young. But does anything change for you, for Thielen, for Chark, for Marshall? Do they get an upgrade because of Bryce Young, or is it still sort of status quo for those guys as more like afterthoughts on draft day, with Thielen most likely the first one being taken?
I mean, if you're telling me going into the season and this is the starting receiving core, then I think it's a pretty big boost for Adam Thielen because I do think Bryce Young can be a good enough passer. Now, the interesting thing is we usually think of young quarterbacks as guys who don't throw to running backs. Well, Bryce Young didn't really have any receivers in college, so he threw to his running back quite a bit. It might be a good thing for Miles Sanders if the team is willing to utilize him in that role. There could be more running back targets available than there usually are with a rookie quarterback. But yeah, if we get through the draft and Thielen's still the clear number 1, then he's got to be at least number 3 for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, I guess the target share will be nice, but we know he's broken down a little bit over the last couple of seasons, and he hasn't exactly taken control of some of the opportunities that he's gotten. So it's not fair to say when you're playing with Justin Jefferson that he's going to dominate targets, dominate production, but he just feels like he got a step slower. And knowing that the troubles that rookie quarterbacks tend to have, as you alluded to earlier. I mean, think about what happened to Deontay Johnson last year, just playing with a rookie quarterback, Kenny Pickett, some of the struggles that he had. So I'm not really looking to target Adam Thielen. I prefer him as number 4 receiver. But there is, I guess, some interest, depending on how late these guys fall based on, again, the opportunities. You say Miles Sanders, they may run the ball a little bit, or a little bit more. I don't know how that's going to play out, though, when the passing game potentially could be a struggle there. So
Yeah.
does this help Miles Sanders' situation with a rookie quarterback?
I think it'll be interesting because we've talked about how Bryce Young didn't run that much in college. And guys who are able to run as quarterbacks make things a little bit easier on the running backs. We saw that happen with Miles Sanders last year. The problem is if they run as much as Jalen Hurts does, then it starts to cut into your touchdowns and it starts to cut in your overall volume. I think it's possible that Young could be the type of quarterback who is elusive enough on the 3 to 4 carries that he gets per game that he opens up the holes, but that he doesn't take too much volume from Sanders. And I definitely wouldn't think they'd use someone Bryce Young's size in the red zone. So I don't think this is a bad thing for Miles Sanders at all.
Yeah, he's going to get a lot of work. Can he hold up to it? Can he take advantage of maybe the role in the passing game, like you said? We did see Bryce Young to Jahmyr Gibbs quite a bit at Alabama. We'll see if that carries over to the Carolina Panthers. So again, Bryce Young, the #1 overall pick, the Carolina Panthers' new starting quarterback. We'll be here all night breaking down all of the draft picks for fantasy football today throughout the NFL draft. For Heath Cummings, I'm Jimmy Eisenberg. Thanks for watching.